Let's talk money, specifically buyers' representation and compensation. There are a lot of buyers out there wondering if they're going to be able to afford the purchase of a new home, if they also have to pay a buyer's agent commission in order to, or compensation in order to represent them. To make sense of what's happening, there has to be a clear understanding of compensation and that it has always been negotiable. I know we touched on this a little bit a week or two ago, but the only thing that is different when it comes to compensation is that it can no longer be advertised in the MLS. And the second thing is it's being decoupled, meaning the seller is responsible for compensating his or her agent, and the buyer may also be responsible for compensating his or her agent. There is nothing at all that states the seller cannot pay the cooperating agent compensation. Looking at the facts is super important, and understanding why did paying the cooperating agent's compensation come into the picture in the first place, right, from the seller's side. So the reality is 90% of qualified buyers in the market have very little net worth because they don't own a home, so they have no equity to pull from. They typically have just enough for the down payment and part of the closing costs. So in most cases, since the buyer is the person who cannot or who can least afford to pay for representation in the transactions, sellers begin to realize the benefit of being willing to compensate a qualified cooperating agent. Ultimately, it allowed them to get their home sold and move to the next stage of life. It was seen as a marketing expense to assist in completing the transaction. So in South Carolina, there is a section in the buyer's agreement that states any fees paid by the seller or the seller's agent to the broker shall be credited against the brokerage fee. The broker shall use their best efforts to obtain payment of the brokerage fee out of the transaction, but the buyer shall have the obligation to pay broker the brokerage fee set forth if the broker cannot obtain payment of the fee out of the transaction. So this verbiage may change. I don't know. And when it does, I'll be the first to let you know. But for now, it clearly states the goal is to get the representation paid for out of the transaction. And if the seller is unwilling to do that, then the buyer will be responsible. It has always been that way, so this is nothing new. Here's my stance on this, and not everyone will agree with me, nor am I asking you to. But the buying and selling of real estate goes far beyond a transaction, right? Especially in the residential sector. You are selling and buying a story and allowing those of us who represent you to work hard in helping you do that. For the buyer, it's a story of new beginnings. And for the seller, it is a legacy, a gift you're willing to extend. The call to my fellow realtors is to walk in the way of integrity as we serve our clients. Know what you're talking about and live it out. To my clients, thank you so much for your continued support and your trust as we empower you to reach your goals and realize the dream of home ownership. Have a great day, and we'll see you next week at the table.